All right. We are now delighted to introduce our keynote speaker for the ceremony. Originally from Morocco, Dr. Nadia Marouf is a clinical scientist and analog astronaut, having completed her PhD at the University of Calgary and then gone on to work for the Canadian Space Agency. Last year, she was named one of Avenue magazine's top 40 under 40. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Nadia Marouf.
Just working on the clicker, bear with me. There we go. Well, hello everybody, and thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute honor to be here with you, celebrating the achievements of our wonderful top 30. Technically, you are under 40. Top 30, under 30 awardees. Your work to make this world a better place is truly inspiring, and I'm very, very proud to be here to celebrate with you. So, talking to you today is of particular honor to me. According to the odds, a woman like me with my background is very unlikely to be here speaking to you. You see, I was born and raised in Morocco, in a small rural community where girls and boys don't enjoy the same rights. Namely, they don't enjoy the same educational access rights as well as career inspirations. This was the first of many obstacles that I had to overcome, but of course, overcoming challenges and adversities is something we all have to overcome in this room, in particular, when you're trying to do something amazing in the world. So today I was thinking to share with you a trajectory of my life, where I've been once upon a time, and share with you some of the obstacles and impossibilities that I had to defy to be here. And then I will give you a quick glimpse into my life as a scientist, an analog astronaut, and an explorer. But before I get started, I just really want to pose a question to you. When you look at your fellow top 30 under 30 awardees, when you look at the alumni, or when you look at somebody that you truly aspire to be like, do you ever pause and think about some of the challenges that they experienced in their life and how they feel about those challenges? Is this something they wish they never experienced, or is this something that they are proud of having lived through and persevered through, and something that makes them who they are? So I'm not going to ask you for answers, but I just want you to contemplate that a little bit. So let's see if I can. Can you hear me? Okay, never mind. So this cartoon is, oops, sorry. Sorry about that. So this cartoon is by one of my favorite artists, Nahid Zamani from Iran, who uses her art to raise awareness for discrimination and some of the challenges that people are experiencing in the world. And as you can see here, we have a little boy with his books and educational tools, looking at the future, looking at all the possibilities, whereas the girl is standing there with only one possibility. Now, I have to admit, in my case, in my community, it was not as extreme as that. There were career aspirations that women could do for a while until they become wives and mothers. Specifically stereotypical careers, usually caring, cashiering, clerical work, administrative work, and I'm not saying that these jobs are not important, but not everybody aspires to be in those positions. And for me personally, I was extremely, extremely lucky, because I was born to a family that really valued education, starting with my father, who was an avid advocate for equal rights for all. If you want something and you want to work for it, You should have it. And thanks to his support, well, I'm just going to track back just a little bit. So my mom and my dad, they got married when my mother was 18 years old. She did not have a choice. She had to get married. But she had a choice of choosing who she could get married to. And she chose my father. I'm very grateful for that, because she went on to have 6 children. I am the only girl. I have 5 brothers. But she never gave up on her aspirations to pursue her post-secondary education. It was not possible for her to pursue that post-secondary education in Morocco. And so in between pregnancies, my father, my grandmother, and a host of support people would take care of my brothers, while my mother is abroad in Spain and France, taking a geology and achieving her career goal to become a geologist. She went on to be the only faculty member in her university, and up until the time she retired, she was still the only faculty member that is a female in her university. And here, oops. And over there, she was getting a royal award for her research and academic achievements. They didn't even mention that she was a female or a male. She just received that award, and she was very grateful for that. And for me, she was my all-time role model, because she had to follow the cultural norms and adhere to what was expected of her, she did not let that get in the way of achieving her career goals and educational goals. And in my community, there was high prevalence of gender-based violence and harassment for girls especially. And so part of my education, part of my upbringing was my parents enrolling me in martial arts at age 4. And every time I go back to visit my club and my coaches, they joke that the first time they met me, I was in nappies. And so it was a very important part of my upbringing. For my father, it was almost as important as my education is learning how to defend myself. Martial art training 6 times a week, sometimes even 7 times a week, including the Sunday cardio training, etc. And it was important for him that I stand up for those that need that training. And so I made sure that if somebody needed standing up for from bullying, I would be there for them. Or in that case, I was teaching self-defense in a community in the UK. Okay. After high school, I was extremely lucky to get the opportunity to move to the UK to pursue my post-secondary education. And Taekwondo continued to be a really important part of my life. I was 4 times national British student champion, and I was on my way to potentially represent Team GB in the Olympics. And so in 2010, this is a picture from 2010 at my graduation. And can anybody recognize where that is? Anybody at all? Yeah, excellent. How about this one? Any Outlander fans? I wish. Yeah, exactly. That's in Scotland, and that's the cloisters at the University of Glasgow. And so during undergrad, I was almost a full-time athlete while a full-time student, and I did not do well. My grades were horrible. And because I was planning to finish my degree, go become an Olympic athlete, and then come back and go to medical school. That was my plan. But I learned through life, and unfortunately I had to learn and change my trajectory through some really tragic events. So a few months before my graduation, my Taekwondo master, and one of those people who you meet probably once in your lifetime, if you're lucky, had a heart attack on the treadmill and passed away. And a few months after that, my father had a heart attack, and I just had a call while I was in Korea training in the summer after my graduation that my dad is awaiting heart surgery because he also had a heart attack. And so that was my first light bulb moment, my first realization of what I really wanted to do in life. Throughout my childhood, I always aspired to be a physician. That was the plan. After I was an Olympic athlete, I was going to go back to medical school and do that. But it was my first light bulb moment that both my father and my master had excellent physicians, yet they still had heart attacks, and my dad went on to unfortunately pass away a couple of years later. And so that was the first time that I thought, if I really wanted to prevent this for other people, I can't just be a physician. I had to be a scientist, because it is scientists that make those preventable measures and innovate and not just prescribe drugs that are already there. So I went to Glasgow and I studied clinical pharmacology, and I just want to say quickly, getting into this program was deemed impossible because it was a program for clinicians. It was clinical pharmacology, and I applied to 20 universities. I got rejected in all, only to get accepted at the University of Glasgow, it was my first choice, but it was almost impossible to get in. It was meant to be for physicians, and I was not a physician. And later on, I worked on that light bulb moment, my new passion, my new inspiration to become a scientist, and I moved to Canada to pursue my doctoral studies here at the University of Calgary. So, anybody in grad school here? Hello. So anybody who has gone through grad school or will go through grad school in the future will know it's hell. It's absolutely hell, and you persevere, you try to do your best, but so many failed experiments, so much criticism, so much loneliness, and you sometimes can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you have to remember your why. Why did you start? I was so close to quitting so many times. But I fell back on my Taekwondo training that I mentioned before. Initially it was meant for me to learn how to defend myself if I had to, but the indomitable spirit and the perseverance that I learned really pulled me throughout my degree. And thankfully, that hard work paid off towards the end, where my doctoral studies contributed to the development of an atherosclerosis vaccine. So this is a vaccine that you can give people who are high risk to prevent them from having a heart attack. As you know, atherosclerosis is the precursor for about 90% of heart attacks and stroke. Now, that a lot of people might ask what's going on with that vaccine. We want it because cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death worldwide still. It is in the final stages of preclinical studies, and it is patented right now. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, it was contribution. It took a village to make something like that. And meanwhile, when you're working on something that you're really passionate about, certain opportunities just show up out of the blue. While preparing for my candidacy, I stumbled on a paper that was describing the parallels between cardiovascular disease here on Earth, the Asian heart, and space travel. Basically, astronauts' hearts age by 20 years for each 6 months spent continuously in space. And in order for us to send astronauts to the moon and Mars, we have to solve that problem. And if we solve that problem for astronauts, and we have to, we probably hear about the developments in space and Elon Musk wanting to send people to Mars next year, to their death, probably. So we have to solve that problem before we take that leap. I read that paper, I digested it, I parked it until a couple of years later when I met retired astronaut Dr. Robert Thirsk. And we had a conversation. It was informal conversation. And then one thing led to another. and then it was a collaboration with the Canadian Space Agency. Again, it's important to keep that open mind, something that's impossible for me at that time because I am an immigrant, I was an international student, I don't have my Canadian citizenship, there is no way that was possible. But it's important to keep an open mind, work with what you have, and the rest will follow at some point. And meanwhile, I mentioned that I grew up doing sports, and for me, sports is the way I take care of my mental health, especially when I moved to Canada on my own, age 24. I did not know anybody here. And going to the mountains was a way to take care of my mental health. Going through physical activity was how I could go through the challenges and still maintain my sanity. And so for me, there was no better way than to, explore around our beautiful backcountry. We are extremely lucky to have access to that, and especially going to the backcountry and hiking to the top of a mountain and just staring at the night sky. It is very inspiring for me. It makes me wonder what's out there and makes me want to explore. Makes me want to learn about what's out there. At the same time, while I want to learn about other planets and the universe outside our planet, I get humbled every time, especially when I am in a glacier, surrounded by 20,000-year-old ice, and going back the following years, realizing how fast the glaciers have receded. And it makes me want to do whatever I could to take action for climate change. I don't exactly know how, except for recycling and not reducing my usage of plastic, etc. And I'm learning a lot from you on how to take action, and hopefully we'll be able to do more. But it is very humbling, makes you forget all your problems and realize how small you are in the world. And I mentioned about my upbringing, extreme sports, exploring extreme environments, academic pursuits, which all prepared me for something I didn't even plan, which is becoming an analog astronaut and an astronaut scientist candidate. And what does that mean? All astronauts have to go through simulations. Going to space without training, without simulations, is extremely dangerous. And so astronauts and analog astronauts go to extreme environments. For instance, here we are at the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah, which is about 320 miles away from the nearest hospital. If something bad happened there, you have to work with your crew, mitigate, to keep that crew member alive. And so some of the experiments we conducted were related to that. And again, this is at the high seas lunar habitat, where we lived there for 6 weeks, conducting experiments, doing technological demonstrations, and studying stress and isolation, to name a few activities. And here I just want to say something that's a little bit off the script, really, but it's something that I learned, that it doesn't matter what you are doing right now. And here I just wanted to give you an example of, for instance, just using a tool like a drill, helping a friend build a deck, not knowing that I will be using that same tool in the OR a few years later to create an animal model to study a coagulation drug, to study the effects of a coagulation drug after orthopedic trauma, or being put on the spot to come up and build a deck at the Canadian Space Agency in the lunar yard, so that we can conduct our experiments there. And finally, using a drill underwater this was a test basically to see how efficient we were to replace a faulty module in neutral buoyancy lab, how quickly and efficiently you can do it. So what I'm saying is, it's important to not focus on just what we are doing, but to increase the tools in our kit. And whatever we do it sincerely and properly. And that's something I appreciate from my upbringing in that small rural community in Morocco. And last but not least, I am very grateful for everybody who has supported me, who have helped me defy those impossibilities. My parents, my mentors, my teachers. I'm very grateful to have chosen to immigrate to Canada. It's a country that invested in my education where my own country didn't. And it is a country that's full of opportunities if you look for them. But you have to look for them. You have to work hard to get there, but they are there for you. And I also want to say again that I am extremely in awe of all of the top 30 and the 30 recipients and honorees, and I'm so inspired. And I look forward to follow your journeys and see what you do to keep making this world a better place. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Marouf, for sharing your beautiful story. You are an inspiration and a role model to all of us. We loved hearing it, and now I imagine several of the top 30s will find themselves on the top 40 list one day.